Good morning, good evening, or good night, wherever you are in the world. I'm Diana Lopez. I'm the advisor on cities and local government here at UNDP New York headquarters. I wish to give you a warm welcome to this SDG Local Solution Series. This is a series of webinars where cities are bringing their contribution to make Agenda 2030 a reality for everyone and everywhere in the world. And we are trying to showcase specific solutions that cities are implementing with a lot of effort, but also a lot of innovation to bring these SDGs to the reality of the citizen in the streets and in the cities around the world. Just some logistics on my end. This webinar is being interpreted in English and Italian.
You have to select the language you would like to listen in, English or Italian.
Interpretazione sotto delle loro schermi Zoom, non nel computer nel Zoom. This webinar is being recorded. It's not live, but we will edit it and upload it in our YouTube channel. And finally, I invite all participants to make questions, introduce yourselves, or make comments, present your own materials, etc. through the chat. The moderator will be taking a look to the chat, and I will be also translating questions into English and Italian if needed. So please use the chat accordingly. You are all very welcome to make comments and questions. So without further ado, I want to present our speakers and moderators today. We're very happy to finally host this webinar. We've been trying for a while to bring them together. They're very busy people, so we are especially thankful for having them with us today. The session will be moderated by Michele Candotti. He's the director of the Executive Office of UNDP and the Chief of Staff here in UNDP New York. We also have with us Franny Civitano. She's the Senior Vice President of New York City Ferry and the Deputy Director of the New York City Economic Development Corporation. Welcome, Franny. And finally, we have Giovanni Seno, who is the Director General of EE.UU SPA Group, which is the Venice Mobility Agency. So with that, Michele, over to you for the session, and we are really looking forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Diana and Franny. And Giovanni, welcome to this session. I think it's going to be a very interesting session for different reasons. First of all, it's about exchanging experiences, exchanging practices, exchanging ideas between two cities that, much as they are very different and extremely, let's say, different in the way they have grown, they have been built, and their historical, let's say, frameworks provide. But much as they are so different, but they have in common one important thing, the public transport solutions. Venice, on one hand, has a unique public transport solution, which is the waterways, and is the only public transport solution they have. New York has the waterways as one of the many public transport solutions. But there are, I would like, before giving the floors to Franny and Giovanni, I would like to give a couple of pointers so that, you know, the conversation can be addressed and can be shaped in a useful manner to all the participants. The first point is that it's the concept of accessibility. So what you're facing as managers of the public transport solutions in your cities, accessibility remains the key elements. Accessibility is access by people to the facilities, but also the affordability of such facilities. So there is an economic and financial element for the general public that you are facing every day. The second is that public transport affects daily lives of people. They affect their timing, the time they consume commuting and moving around. They affect the environmental impact that each solution has. And finally, it causes or depends on a logistical nightmare that on a daily basis you have to manage. So how to reconcile accessibility, affordability, both in public and in individual pockets terms, the daily lives and the impact on daily lives, the environmental impact, and the obviously the logistics that are involved in providing this public service is a huge undertaking for all of you. So with this in mind, and knowing that the daily challenges that you're facing, let me give the floor to Franny Civitano, the Senior Vice President, New York City Ferry, and over to you to share your perspective, your challenges, but also your solutions. And I know that you are on a daily basis as a user trying to improve the services on a regular basis. So over to you, Franny.
Thank you very much. Let me share my screen here. All right. Well, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for having me today. My name is Franny Civitano. I am a Senior Vice President and the Deputy Director of NYC Ferry at the New York City Economic Development Corporation. I'll refer to the Economic Development Corporation as EDC for the rest of this presentation. So EDC is New York City's nonprofit organization, and we do many things, but one of our proudest accomplishments is overseeing the NYC Ferry system. So I help lead a team of 16 people who manage operations, safety, policy, service planning, special projects, contracts, finance, and more. We work closely with our private ferry operator, Hornblower, who is tasked with actually hiring and training the captains and staffing the deckhands and the captains, crew management, ticketing, customer service, marketing, some community outreach as well. So our team at EDC provides the policy direction and the contract oversight, and we work closely with our private ferry operator who enacts all of those policies and you know, brings them to the people, to the riders. So as an overview, NYC Ferry operates year-round every day from about 6 in the morning. Some routes start a little earlier than that until about 10 p.m. We have 6 full-time routes and then a few seasonal routes that we add in the summertime. So you'll see the map on the right. So this is our service, and it connects all 5 boroughs of Manhattan or of New York City. So 2 years ago, we introduced a new fare structure. We raised the base fare from $2.75, which at the time was the cost of a subway or a bus ticket. And all of our tickets were that price. So 2 years ago, we increased our fares and made the, you know, a one-way ticket $4. And then we introduced a 10-pack discount bundle where if you bought 10 tickets at once, the individual ticket price stayed at $2.75. So that was a benefit for regular riders, for people who are using the service frequently. We also expanded our discount program for people with disabilities, seniors, and low-income New Yorkers to offer one-way tickets for $1.35. So this new fare system has been really an aim to increase what you were talking about, Michele, you know, accessibility from a financial perspective. And it's been highly successful so far, balancing fare revenue and, you know, without losing ridership, which is really a miracle. But NYC Ferry really complements New York City's mass transit. So we provide redundancy and support to New York City's subway and bus system. We know that we can't compete with the subway and bus system. We don't want to. We really want to be another good option for people, especially people who live and work near the waterfront, where subways are often, you know, really far from the waterfront. Maybe it takes you a half a mile or a mile to get to a subway station. From the waterfront. So our network, our ferry network includes 38 purpose-built boats. We have 25 landings across the city. And so really this investment in NYC Ferry as a transit system has also been a really important infrastructure investment for the city of New York. Because our crews are going up and down the East River and the Hudson River for 16 hours a day, we are often finding ourselves in positions of first responders to help vessels in distress. And we've also stepped in times of transit emergencies or other emergencies where we needed to provide service. We serve about 7 million riders annually. And we know that most of these riders, about 85%, are New York City residents. So we have a really strong commuter base. About 3% of our riders make up almost half of all of our trips, which means that we have a dedicated group of people. I think 2 of them are on this call right now, who take trips regularly, usually for work purposes. But then we also see, once the weather gets warm, we also see that we have an increase in folks who are taking the ferry for leisure, which is something we really encourage. Here we go. All right, so this photo was taken by my friend and a talented Padua-born photographer, Francesca Magnani, as part of an NYC Ferry photo collection that she did called Gente del Ferry. And it really captures the vibe of NYC Ferry. It shows the upper deck of a 350-passenger vessel returning from Rockaway Beach. And this scene really embodies the experience of NYC Ferry, which I think is an important aspect to any ferry system. In New York, in NYC Ferry, we kind of call it the ferry factor, where it's this kind of intangible thing that just it makes the experience so much more enjoyable. You're connected to water, you've got fresh air, and it really just makes the experience that much better. So we think about the ferry as benefiting people because it reduces travel time often for people, and so it gets them there faster. It's usually a very reliable way to travel. You know, if it says it's going to come at a certain time, it most often does. But there's also just this quality of life aspect where you can have a moment as part of your day, especially when you're going to and from work, where you can just feel sort of at peace. And that's something that I think is one of the most magical things about ferries. And sometimes you don't feel that in traditional transit. And so I just wanted to, comment on that. And I feel like this photo really embodies that. So 2 years ago, with the election of a new mayor, we launched the Ferry Forward plan for NYC Ferry. So the goal of this plan was to make the ferry system more accessible, more equitable, and more financially sustainable. So to enhance accessibility and equity, we expanded our discount program, which I mentioned earlier. And we also doubled down on our robust community outreach initiatives, which are managed mostly by our operator. So this team promotes the ferries in various neighborhoods, going to senior centers, going to public housing, going to various, civic organizations, street fairs, to promote the ferry and make sure people really know what it is, how they can benefit from it, how they can sign up for the discount program, all of that. So reducing our subsidy is a key focus of NYC Ferry. Public transportation requires subsidies. We know that we're never going to have a $0 subsidy, but our goal is to minimize the need as much as possible. So we're doing this in a couple of ways. We reprocured our ferry operator contract last year, and selected an operator with a strong safety record and a really effective marketing and revenue generation plan. So we get about 25% of our expenses back through the fare box. And so we're seeking different opportunities to kind of close that gap a little bit more. And this photo shows one of the ways that we creatively engage advertisers on board. So this was one of the 4 boats that was taken over by the Harry Potter play on Broadway. Each one was kind of representing a different Hogwarts house. And so this was just, they had actors that came on board and sang. And so this is just a creative way where we are looking to, stay financially sustainable, is bringing in advertisers in creative ways. So lastly, I know, we've got 10 minutes here. So decarbonization, environmental sustainability. It's a key focus for vessel operators and ferry operators worldwide, and definitely for NYC Ferry as well. So our fleet still operates on diesel. They're all relatively new boats. They were built in the last 5 years or so. But we are actively exploring both short-term and long-term solutions to reduce emissions. In this process, we're focused on both improving our greenhouse gas emissions, which is a global problem, as well as improving local air quality by targeting certain pollutants so that we can, reduce that impact from the communities that we serve. So both AVM and NYC Ferry are part of a global group of ferry operators that meets regularly to discuss vessel operations, general best practices, and decarbonization strategies among them. So learning from European counterparts who are generally ahead of the US in efforts to reduce vessel emissions has really been invaluable for us as we are starting this process to figure out what technologies are going to work best for our fleet. So in the US, passenger vessels have to be built domestically, which means that we need US shipyards and operators who have experience with advanced decarbonization technologies like electric vessels. Our operation also requires fast ferries and rapid charging capabilities because we have very limited boarding times, and pretty quick routes. So for us, building out the infrastructure on the land side is going to be as important or more important than the actual vessel side itself. So despite being in the early stages, we are optimistic and excited about implementing a variety of reduced emissions future for NYC Ferry, and we look forward to those solutions that will make this possible. So with that, hopefully this gives you a good overview of NYC Ferry and our plans for making the service more equitable, financially sustainable, and environmentally friendly. And I look forward to questions.
Rani, huge thanks, because this is very exciting and extremely insightful because of the environmental aspect that you cover, the costing and pricing aspect and the challenges that go with it. The policies that need to be put in place in order to sustain the operations and the logistical aspect. So very, very insightful. Before I open the floor to others, I would like to invite Giovanni to see whether he has any specific question to your presentation. Giovanni, nessuna domanda per Franny?
Sì, intanto la ringrazio e ringrazio tutti voi.
Yes, thank you, and thank you very much for inviting me to this webinar. Franny, she has defined their service as an option, an alternative to other services to transport people. Here in Venice, that's not the case. The water transport, it's not an option, it's the only way to transport people. So going back to the option they represent as it has been defined, do you have any development policies to generate more attraction to your services as an alternative to the other means of transport on inland, or do you limit due to any regulations, I do not know, to remain as an optional service as you have defined it? And the second question I have, if I may, is related to the environment. In your objective, green strategies, do you have, or what are your mobilization strategies you're going to implement?
Franny, over to you. The two questions, you heard them, very, very interesting questions. One is about the options, one is about the possible expansion of your service, and the second is about the environmental technology or the technology that supports your decarbonization strategies.
Great. Okay, so first one, asking about potential expansion of the service, is that right? And then environmental in the second?
Yes.
Okay, great. Yes, so on expansion, I will say NYC Ferry is one of the I think there are a lot of new services, ferry services coming about in recent years. So I don't know if I can confidently say we had been the fastest growing, but we certainly got the service up and running in pretty record time. We announced that NYC Ferry would be a 6-route service in 2015. And then by May 1st of 2017, we had started the service, and it was a really rapid expansion since then. We launched those first 6 routes by the end, really by the fall of 2018, and then had announced pretty soon after that we would expand again further in the Bronx and then Staten Island and the West Side. So up until now, post the last expansion that we did, which brought us to Throgs Neck and St. George and Staten Island and the west side of Manhattan, we have been focusing on stabilizing operations, finding ways to reduce costs, and general expansion of ferry service is most likely going to increase your costs, or you're going to have to make some kind of concessions. And so we've really been focused on ways to reduce costs and get more efficient. But that's not to say that it could never happen. I think that, that is something that we will look at to see, what the benefit to riders would be. Like, is there a transit need? And, how can we support that? Especially when you factor in the environmental factor there too, like we need to be conscious of that. So we don't have any active plans for expansion, but it's something that we regularly look at. We get a lot of requests for different landings. And so we don't have any firm plans, but not to say that it could never happen. And then on the environmental side, I think that you all are much further along than we are. And that's mostly because of what I mentioned about US technologies. What I'm really very, very I feel very optimistic hearing from counterparts in San Francisco and Seattle, other places where they have active electric vessels in, under construction. There are test vessels that are operating in certain parts of the United States. I think the technology generally is not as practiced here. And so some of it is learning from the counterparts in Germany and in Italy, in, the Netherlands, and seeing what is working for them. I think that shoreside infrastructure is going to be a really huge challenge for us. I think that the technology that's happening on the vessel side is much further advanced than the land side. And those two pieces have to, work together really efficiently. So we're looking at a whole host of things. I think a big question for us will be if there is anything we can do with our existing fleet, or really if we have to build new vessels entirely. So that will be something that we will be investigating in the very near future. Yeah.
Thank you, Franny. And actually, your answers also covered 2 questions that I saw in the chat. One was about the future innovations, the technology innovations on the fleet and on the services, and the second was the decarbonization and the electric powered consideration of electric powered ferries. So very, very good, and thank you very much, Franny. Over to Giovanni now to tell us about Venice, about introducing Venice as you said, where the ferry are not an option, but are the only option available to power the public transport system in Venice. Over to you, Giovanni.
Sì, volentieri, grazie ancora.
Thank you very much. Thanks again for inviting me. I have prepared 8 slides that, in order to give you a general framework regarding the situation in which we operate here in Venice. And after my presentation, I would like to make some other comments related, such as accessibility, environment, and impact on people's lives. Thank you, Diana, for passing over the slides. And we are a state organization. We provide services for the city of Venice and all the metropolitan area of Venice. The group is made up of three societies. It's a holding that has two main vehicles. Those are the EE.UU and Vela. It has 300 employees, total turnover over 320 million euros per year. We have a fleet of 440 bus and tram that provides services over 101 lines. We have a people mover that links the inland, the city of Venice, with the Torqueto Island, and a fleet of 140 vessels and ferries. And for us, the ferries, the boats that transport vehicles, and those boats transporting just passengers are vessels. So we make that distinction. And these boats work on 27 different service lines. And the group also provides services for private transit that are vital for the city of Venice, in terms of the great holidays and the historic regatta, Venice Carnival. And so over my desk, I see a lot of events, and we need to make strategies for the transfer of those tourists. And so coming back to the navigation, thanks, Diana, we provide 530,000 hours of navigation per year. And in 2023, we have transferred about 122 million of passengers. 145 million were before COVID. And all these passengers go on and go off over more than 1,200 wharves over the Venice region. And it appears to be evident that even there is a great disparity between that is the coexistence between residents of the historical center, that is 50,000, and the million of tourists that visit us every year. Thanks, Diana.
The slide here shows you can come back to the slides if there's questions afterwards. There's no information that is secret here, but this is our fleet. We have 7 ferry boats, which are up to 700 tons, so they can transport both cars and passengers and trucks as well in the Venetian area. Then we have motor vessels, 7 of them, up to 1,300 people transported. Then we can go down to the smallest ones, which are single pilot motorboats, the smaller ones for special services and for emergencies, specific emergencies. So we have quite an offer. It's clear, Diana, that we are really working to, like everybody else does in the public-private services, to improve our efficiencies. And on the other hand, we are working closely on environmental aspects and also in accessibility to facilitate transport usage. We are replacing our units with new units, but this is an activity that has been done for many years now. For you to have an idea, most of our fleet today which runs on diesel fuel. It's a stage 5 technology, as you may know, and we will come to what's the equivalent for Euro 6. We are now contribute CO2 emissions for the city of Venice of very low order. So all of these vessels navigating on the Venetian lagoon, they contribute very, very low percentages, marginal percentages to pollution, to emissions. Now, our fleet has implies 131 million euro investment plans, investing on new technologies. It should be said that we will never invest on full electric diesel because the kind of power that we require in the lagoon for our services is not well adapted to current full electric technologies for different reasons, but mostly because of the weight of batteries, among other things. So that would imply reducing the number of passengers transported. Therefore, we have made a strategic choice. The choice is going on to new versions of the 5 engines, low emission engines, and also hybrids. That's our choice. In our regulations do not allow the use of hydrologicals for water transportation, nor the use of methane for safety concerns. So we have been bound to follow the electric pathway, but not full electric, but hybrid rather, with new generation engines. Thank you, Diana. One of the major challenges that we face, and we need to consider this, is coexistence of citizens and tourists. Public transportation at the local level, according to Italian and European rules, cannot discriminate, segregate people. So we cannot think of giving public transportation service just for tourists, setting aside our citizens. Therefore, we have invented for ourselves the concept of priority access, which means that if you are a Venetian citizen, if you live there, you have a card that opens up a priority embarkation option for the boat that is right there where you want to get on. But that priority embarkation doesn't legally mean access priority to the boat itself, in the sense that if it gave this priority to the boat, we would be breaking the law of non-discrimination of our public transportation system. Diana, the last image, just to say that we are making an enormous effort to find solutions for ticketing aspects. We have a WAP ticketing. We are learning about new services to be given like this month. We have opened up credit card usage for our customers. There's a number of apps that are being developed, and we are investing a lot on info mobility, which is a strategic investment, because in the future it will allow us to work on our timings, our schedules. If the customer learns that something is going on regarding a landing spot, or how long the boat will take to get to the place to the landing place, all of these apps will allow us to respect our schedules. It's something that has been implemented already for buses, but we will work towards deleting the schedules in order to improve services to our customers with these info mobility apps. As to accessibility, certainly it is something we have to pay a lot of attention to, because there's rules that drive us to do so, but also because accessibility for people has to do with, for example, pontoon stability. The pontoon and the boat are floating there, so there has to be a stabilizing mechanism for the safety of embarking and disembarking passengers. Therefore, we have these pontoons or mobile platforms, light but robust, which are in agreement with safety rules. And that platform is extended between the boat and the landing in order for people to be able to come and go. Accessibility, of course, has to consider the disabled or people with different capacities or abilities. So they will also have available, for example, wheelchairs and other facilities. I think I've given you a general scenario, superficial perhaps, but also I think very thorough.
Many thanks, Giovanni, because it's very, very interesting how two different contexts, two different business models, two different costing and pricing strategies, etc., are actually facing the same question, the same challenges. Franny, any question, any specific, let's say, question to Giovanni on this presentation?
Yes, thank you. I am consistently fascinated to learn more and more about the ferry service in Venice, and I can't wait to come back and see it in person again. So I think this is your plan for lowering emissions is something that I heard from your colleague in the group that I'm a part of. And so your approach with hybrids, you said that you're not considering full electric because of the weight and the passenger capacity limitation. I think that's something that we also struggle with is the weight. We have very light boats right now. And so, you know, it seems difficult to add a lot of batteries to our existing fleet. So I hear you on the weight and the limitations on passenger capacity. Is your decision to go to hybrid also having to do with upland charging infrastructure? And how do you, how will those batteries get charged? Is this landside, or is this really when the boats are docked being maintained? Like, how will that work?
Allora, la transizione ecologica o diciamo
The ecology transition, the green deal, considers one of the essential aspects that has to do with requalifying maintenance. We're investing major amounts because maintenance is done in two areas alone, and that's where we take care of maintenance, and it has concerns. For example, la batteria che noi utilizziamo è un ibrido con with a generator on board, a hybrid with a diesel on board that changes its power to electric. We have both possibilities. So because time is a concern, the necessary time to stop the vessels in the Canale Grande in particular. So if I have a ferry that displaces 25 tons with a number of people on board, I have to stop my vessel as if I was stopping a machine, but it still keeps moving. So this is one of the reasons why we are not going full electric, and we have gone towards hybrids with a diesel engine. So the baseline is connected to the electrical motor, but at the same time, the same engine provides service to a generator that allows recharging batteries and also an extra of power for an emergency maneuver as well. So two engines. We in Italy, not just in Venice, in all over Italy, we have a problem with the green wave compliance, and it's our historical, cultural heritage. It's something protected by the Sovrintendenza, and it has to comply with the requirements of other organizations and agencies, for example, landscaping of our monuments and heritage in general. And this makes it impossible to install right away or put up transformations, because first we need to consider the scenery and the architectural preservation of our monuments. If we want to go fully on the green wave, we need to understand or implement electrical transformations to have the right power, for example, to charge our batteries in our specific case.
So, Giovanni, extremely interesting answers that point at 2-3 elements responding to Franny's question. First of all, the technological challenges, the coexistence of different objectives, the environmental and decarbonization objectives on one hand, and the context limitations, or the limitation provided by the context in which the services have to be provided. So quite interesting, let's say, challenges, some similarities and some different ways of tackling the same problems. So what I would like to do to both of you is to offer 2-3 questions that I received from the chat. The first question is on the info mobility. So the public information about timetables, etc., and how can citizens contribute to the review, to provide feedback and adjustments to the timetables. That's the first question. The second thing, so it's citizen participation in further refining the matching between users' exigencies and the provision of services. The second, and the timetables. The second question is about interconnectivity between different transport modalities. We know that, for instance, in New York, you have different options. You are one of the many services provided, but is there a plan to connect, for instance, with bikers, with bike riders, with other transport modalities that could be facilitated in accessing the ferry system while using also interchangeably different transport modalities? And the third point is about the payment systems. And one critical question is, we are moving towards, particularly listening to Giovanni, to different options on electronic payments. How do you reconcile that with the privacy regulations in each country or in each context? Because there is an element of privacy and protection of data, sensitive data of users. So 3 things, timetables and citizen participation. And the second is the interconnectivity of transport modalities. And the third one is the privacy element versus the, let's say, use of electronic payment systems. Who wants to start? Franny, would you like to start?
Start. Great. So I think on timetables and user participation, I think one of the biggest things that we tried to achieve with the launch of NYC Ferry in 2017 was so NYC Ferry was an expansion or growth from a previous service called the East River Ferry, which was a pilot service that really tested the viability of passenger ferry service in New York, which obviously has a very deep history before bridges were built, but this was, resurgence of that. And so one of the biggest questions that we saw during the East River Ferry, which was just one route, was people really wanted to know the answer to the question, where is my boat? And so with NYC Ferry, we put a lot of effort, and our ferry operator does this particularly well with live schedules that are updated to the minute. And so while the posted time might be 10:25, for example, if it's going to be 3 minutes late, or if it's, something like that, then the real-time schedule will reflect that. And so one of the things we're doing is an accessibility upgrade as well, is having that real-time schedule accessible not only through our ticketing app, which about half of our riders use to buy their tickets and look at schedules, but also expanding that to be able to, you could pick up the phone and call an automated number and type in a landing code and get the real-time schedule. So if you are blind, for example, and you can't use the app, like that would be a good option for you to get real-time schedules. Or you could do it by text messages. So if you're deaf, or if you don't have a phone with internet connectivity, or you don't want the app, like you could get real-time schedules there. So I think that type of information is really important to the reliability. And so I hope I didn't to completely
No.
butcher that question. Okay. But we are looking for ways to improve information really about, and one of the features that we are looking forward to rolling out later this year is, as we know, you can only put a certain amount of people on a ferry, while as, a subway car, people can kind of be crammed in as much as space as there is. With a ferry, you can't do that. At least in New York, we're regulated by the Coast Guard. There's very strict regulations on how many people. And so one of the things we're looking forward to introducing later this year is within our ferry app, we are going to be introducing an estimate of how many people are on the boat that's coming to you. So an estimate of, will you get on this boat, essentially, is the question that we're trying to answer for people. And so I'll skip down to number 3 because I'm talking about the app and electronic payments. So I'll just keep on this, but about half or more of our users use the app. They buy their tickets on there and they use it for scheduling and other features. We're very happy with the app. We think that's a great way to do it. I think one of the things that we made clear when we reprocured our ferry contract last year was we were very interested in open loop payment systems. So you bringing your own fare media, you could tap your card, you could tap your phone wallet, whatever it is. So privacy is absolutely critical to that, and making sure that that is effective and safe. But we really do see that as an opportunity to expand accessibility. So if you're a tourist or if you're someone who doesn't come regularly, we don't want you to wait in a line at a ticket vending machine or have to download the app to ride our service. Like, we want you to just be able to get on within a matter of seconds. So that is something we are, hopeful about and are working towards. But privacy is obviously a huge, important part of that. And then lastly, integration with other transit. I think, the subway and bus system they're just the regulators involved. That's run by the state. We're, hyper local in the city. And so integration is, as far as fares goes, is not something that we are currently, really able to do easily. But we do coordinate and try to, in areas specifically where a bus is really the only way to get to the ferry, like we want the timetables to match up. We want bike racks to be available at the ferries. We eliminated the bike fee, so now you can take your bike on board for free. So that is something that I think we still have room to improve, and we must work within the confines that we have.
Thank you, Franny. Giovanni, same questions about privacy, about infomobility, and about the interconnectivity of different modes of transport.
Sì, allora io
Yes, I wouldn't like to seem to take too much time. I consider that when we want to speak about citizens and local transport, we enter into a field that is like taxis. For citizens, it's always too much. For citizens, public transport is always scarce. And so it's a conversation which we need to find a conclusion that it never seems positive. If we measure in a specific point in the great exchange apps, and we can find that the timetables for commuters and for those who go to school must be respected. And so we solve this by making our services available on the basis of the requirements from these kind of users. In relation to multimodal transportation, we need to connect two networks, and they have to be synchronized, autobus and navigation. And we think I think we have solved this at the beginning because we needed to do so. There is an issue that is different, that it's being discussed these days in the Italian territory, that is the mass services with the integration of the car sharing, of vehicle sharing, the apps for exchange, and so on and so forth. I am very perplexed in the face of this issue because we need to first make a different move. We need to make our users make more familiar with this, because in New York, for example, you have different habits, and users are used to changing services. But here we have something that is related to Italian culture. So before trying to implement multi-modality, we need to change our users' habits. If we don't change the synchronization of vessels and buses, it's not going to be possible. I have not understand what can be the problems with privacy, as electronic payments such as EE.UU are done with bank systems and other systems that are made with contracts with entities that ensure the privacy of electronic transactions, for example, over credit cards. In terms of payments on our apps, as Franny and we have in our services, when we buy an app in Apple Store, our users sign an agreement, and they know that how their data will be used. So I don't see any problems in this sense. At least for us, we haven't had any. It's different. Sorry, moderator. It's different in relation to other. As Carla has, Carla, it's different in terms of contribution. I would like to open up another discussion, but it has a different profile to that of the other types of payment.
Huge thanks to Franny and Giovanni. I think the conversation within the limited time available has been extremely rich, extremely informative. And in the end, one thing that struck me, apart from the commonalities that both cities have in terms of providing viable options for public transport, is the commonalities are, you know, the challenges to commuters, how to respond to the challenges to commuters, the technology advancement, and the challenges and the limitations of the adoption of different technologies, the environmental aspect, the green wave referred to by Giovanni, and the limitations, logistics limitations that do exist, and basically inform also the speed and depth of the transformation or the decarbonization of the fleets and of the service. But apart from that, what is striking is that both cities are trying to meet and to deal with two common challenges. One is the challenges of the well-being and the needs and exigencies of service of the general public. the usual commuters, so to speak, because that is a public service that is primarily designed to serve our communities on a regular basis. But that is often challenged by an additional element, additional challenge, which is the incredible peaks that are posed by the tourist industry, by the tourists, and reconciling these two exigencies, the exigencies of accessibility of the general public, and on the other hand, the peaks imposed by the huge waves of tourists in both cities, particularly in Venice, given the infrastructure and the historical, let's say, historical setting in which we operate, are huge challenges that you're trying to, let's say, address with multiple ways and multiple solutions. So very, very interesting. And what is a conclusion, or let's say one of the conclusions of this quick conversation, is that actually all the challenges, being them social, financial, or environmental challenges, land inevitably at city level. Policies are governed normally at global level. Challenges are determined, analyzed, and also defined at global level, or at, let's say, national level. But where the impact is mostly felt is by the users, and the users interface with the local government authorities. And that is the biggest challenge that I see, but also the biggest articulation of responses and the variety of responses that we have witnessed today. Back to Diana. Huge thanks again to Giovanni and to Fanny, and over to you, Diana, for guidance on how to conclude this session.
Thank you, Michele. Thank you, Franny and Giovanni, for your presence today. It was wonderful, and thanks to the participants for being there, and we will send you the outcomes of this very soon. Thank you so much.